Good afternoon and welcome to the SECCA 2021 breakout session on operating digital campaigns with in-house resources. My name is Brandy Neighbors and I am Assistant Director of Marketing. Okay, I'm sorry, we might have to back up and Michelle, would you mind just for one moment muting? I think we're getting a little feedback. All right, here we go again. Good afternoon and welcome to the SECCA 2021 breakout session on operating digital campaigns with in-house resources. My name is Brandy Neighbors and I'm Assistant Director of Marketing and Strategic Communications at the University of Alabama. I'll be serving as moderator for today's session and encourage your participation using the chat feature. To better create a better user experience, we kindly ask that video and audio remain in the off position. It is my privilege to introduce Michele Horn, Executive Director of Integrated Marketing and Brand Strategy, and Kalena Bragg, Digital and Social Media Strategist at the University of Georgia. Without further delay, I'm going to pitch over to our friends and colleagues at University of Georgia. Take it away.
Great, thanks, Brandy. Can you guys hear me all right? All right, I know there's still a few people coming in, so feel free to keep on coming. So like Brandy said, Kalena and I work at the University of Georgia. I'm the Executive Director for Integrated Marketing and Brand Strategy. It's a lot of words, but I have actually been at UGA for about 4.5 years and have been in higher ed for that amount of time. My background's actually tech marketing, but I've enjoyed taking that same marketing formula and like applying that just to a different audience with a couple of different messages. So I'm happy to be here today. Handing over to Kalena to introduce herself.
Yes, I'm the social strategist for UGA. I've been with UGA for over 10 years now, which is time flies when you're having fun, right? Do a lot in social, but have now branched out into our digital strategy. I like to work with Michele on coming up with all of our strategic initiatives for the year and bringing those to life in the digital realm.
Cool. All right. So we will jump in. We actually don't have, well, hang on, there we go. We don't have a lot of slides. I actually put them in PDF because I don't know why the presentation mode just messes with me in Zoom. So we're trying to be a little more straightforward and not try to get too fancy. But let's jump in. So as Brandy said, feel free to put comments in the chat and we'll either get to those at the end or maybe throughout, just depending. We'll keep an eye on that. So really, why are we doing this is the first thing you need to ask when you do anything marketing related. You know, we got to get to that goal, audience, and messages. So really the thing about your goal and what we're going to do is kind of talk about generally what we did and then also give an example for each of these things. And so what we did is we kind of came up with a strategic goal and then also a marketing goal for what we were doing our in-house campaigns. And then we also look at our audience. So that's demographics, that's where are they? There's a number of different ways that you can actually target people with digital, which makes it really nice. Messaging, what messages do we want these people to know? So we really can go into all kinds of different things there, but you know, what do we want people to know about us? And then the proof points beyond that as well. So I think, like all of you, I'm sure this is also where you start. So we don't want to get into too much detail here because it's pretty standard marketing practice to kind of go kind of dig into these pieces whenever you're starting a new project. But just, you know, again, wanted to make sure we all start there. So this is our UGA example. So when we we'd been working with an agency for a couple of years on a handful of our digital projects. And whenever we went to kind of say, let's see if we can do this in-house. We have the tools, but let's see what we can do ourselves and just kind of like step into it a little bit. And this was maybe 2.5 years ago, working with Kalena to kind of dig in a little bit and figure out, what pieces could we take from an agency just to see what kind of money savings we would have, maybe flexibility, that sort of thing. And so we said, okay, well, what's our strategic goal? So what we're trying to do with these campaigns is raise awareness. We are all SEC schools. We all know each other. We take for granted that we know who each other are. So I know that whenever I was living in Texas, I actually didn't know a whole lot about the University of Georgia. And so I think understanding that there is an awareness issue and sometimes a perception issue. People know SEC is great sports schools, but we want them to know about so many more things, like what we've just been talking about earlier in some of the sessions. So that's really what we're strategically trying to do with our in-house digital campaigns. And then the marketing goal is like, what do we want the ads themselves to do? So we were optimizing based on our strategic goal for impressions, page views, or clicks. And so that's something to always consider is when you're selling a product, it's very different, or when you're trying to, some of you might be working in schools or colleges and you're trying to get people to actually, go to your MBA program or sign up for something or go to an event that you have. That's a little bit different, but whenever you're just talking about awareness and overall perception, sometimes impressions is the thing that you care about the most. How many people just saw it is important, let alone doing something. But of course, page views and clicks are good too. Page views being just they went to your page, and then clicks being clicking in a little bit further on that page. So audiences. This is just a subset of what we've worked on. We've tested our way into a couple of different audiences and messages, but this I thought gave you all a little bit of a view into what we were doing. So business leaders, the Athens community, and then alumni and donors are sort of the main audiences we tend to talk to. And so we kind of just generally got that under control and said, okay, well, what do we want those people to know about us? So like I said, we don't need to talk about sports. Everybody knows that. So let's talk about research and innovation that's happening at UGA. Let's talk about the impact that we have on the state to those folks in our kind of state group. And then let's talk about our academic rankings, where, you're just general US News World Report or other things like that you can kind of brag about, some of those brag points to just showcase the academic excellence of your institution. We'll get into this in the next slide a little bit, but acknowledging too that some of this is going to be state conversations, the second message there, versus a national conversation. So sometimes we would want to talk to business leaders that are in Georgia, and other times maybe business leaders that are outside of Georgia. And so you're going to have a little bit of a different kind of pairing there. But this sort of strategy sets you up in a place that you at least know why you're doing something. I know I like to ask that around here a lot, is like, why are we doing this? What problem are we solving? And so this kind of helps you sort of just set that from the beginning. So you kind of start there. Okay, so the next question you get to is, what are we doing? So you have sort of the why in place, which again is very important. But this chart actually, we put this together my first year here, and we sometimes call it the bubble chart, but it allows us to really marry all of that strategy up. And so we're able to say, okay, this is our campaign name, which, sort of kind of aligns with just your overall themes and sometimes aligns a little bit with your messages. But who's your audience? Primarily, who are those people, but then also where do they live? What geography are we wanting to target? What messages, again, kind of going back to those messages, and then acknowledging the fact that sometimes there's a primary message you want that audience to know, and then there's a secondary message, and there may be multiple of primary and or secondary depending. And that's what helps you get to the versions of your creative for your digital ads. So that really helps kind of bring sort of, alignment together with what your strategy is and what you actually then execute. Time frame is, of course, important. You probably don't want to do every single thing all year round, but there are some things that does make sense to have a drumbeat of information. Ad type is kind of your channel when you think about digital marketing and the different levers you can pull. So we'll again show you an example of this in a minute. And then your ad goal, we talked about this a little bit already, just sort of that marketing goal. What do you want that ad to do at the end of the day? So with that, we'll show you the UGA example version of this. So when it comes down to it, again, it's just going across each line and thinking strategically, going back to your goals, going back to who do you want to talk to and what do you want to tell them. And so you can see how it's come together here for a campaign we call Impact Local. And so it's our Athens focused campaign. We want them to know that we support the state. We contribute to the city, we contribute to the state economically, but then also in other ways too. Service is a big part of our message as well. And so that is, of course, general public, and then even sometimes city leadership in Athens and the surrounding counties. Time frame for this one is year round. We do want to kind of have a drumbeat of messages, and we have plenty to say. So we are able to pretty easily have sort of some messages that are all year round. You will notice that research and innovation is a part of this one as well, even though that's a secondary message. And that's because we like to partner with Athens businesses when it comes to our innovation district, for instance, and just their involvement with the university overall when it comes to startups and new ideas, even mentorship kind of programs that are involved in that. Research to a lesser degree, but we kind of put those two together. So you can see that there. All right, so then ad type, like we talked about, you can see in this list, display ads is just those standard advertising digital ads that you would get whenever you go to any number of sites. Social media, of course, is the ads that you get in your social feed, primarily Facebook and Instagram. YouTube pre-roll, I'm sure everyone is very familiar with as well. We actually used our PSA to test our way into sort of how does that work for some YouTube pre-roll ads this past fall. And then also listed here, we have paid search. So we've been doing a little bit of paid search in some of our campaigns because we want to figure out how can we capitalize on some of the things that we know, those key messages that we know are important for us to get out. Like how can we write stories that help us rank organically, but then also we can boost sort of through a paid search sort of approach. And so we don't do that as much. We're actually testing the waters a little bit more this coming year with paid search, but I thought it was worth mentioning that that is also one of the things that we've been working on. Now, one thing you won't see here is remarketing. So one of the strategies that an agency will have you do, and they generally almost always do, is you have your display ad. Once someone clicks on a display ad and goes to your site, they'll kind of collect that audience and then you'll get remarketed to. We've all seen this. You go to, buy a shirt and you get followed around by shirt ads for the next 3 weeks. So we're not doing that piece. It's more complicated. And so we just haven't gotten there yet. I know Kalena and I have talked about it a couple of times, but it gets a little tricky. And so we haven't gone there yet with this one. But we really have seen some good results out of just doing the things that we are doing. And again, that ad goal is really important. So when I say something works, it works because we know what our ad goal is. So going back again to our strategic goal of just raising the brand reputation of UGA, impressions again is really important. It seems silly coming from a tech marketing background when I was trying to sell products all the time that impressions would even matter that much, but that's because my goal was very different. So you have to, again, remember what your goal is. And so you'll see here, impressions is very important across the board. Page views is just sort of that additional interest. So even better that we're getting those page views, even more engagement there. For the growing innovation line here, we actually want a little more engagement there. We're interested in actually seeing if we can not only tell people about the innovation district that we have here at UGA, but also get them to do something. And so we have our calls to actions in those ads are also a little bit different than what you would see in some of the just more standard, we want to just tell you something kind of ads. And so it's interesting too with calls to action and digital ads. Back in the day, I've been doing marketing a long time. you used to actually have to say, click here or something along those lines. Well, people know you can click a banner ad. You absolutely, no question, even my mom knows that in her 70s that she can click an ad and it takes her someplace. So you don't actually have to say, click here anymore. People still sometimes do, and that's fine. But, you know, if we really want them to like read something or that kind of thing, then we can consider sort of putting that sort of call to action in. So we kind of have played with that. Sometimes we still do like click here sort of kinds of things, but it's just one of those things that as people are more familiar with this stuff, you just don't have to work as hard. So, yeah, so I think that covers where we sort of get to say, all right, we've done our strategy. We've asked why we're doing this. We've then said, how are we going to actually do it? And so we kind of have a good formula in place to then actually execute. So I'm going to hand it off to Kalena to talk to you about how we are doing this. So Kalena.
Thanks. Yeah, how are we going to get up and running? So after you have your wonderful plan that Michele has helped you put together, you're going to have to put it into motion. So you should really give yourself a couple of months to get all of this set up. That includes getting all your approvals from leadership, getting your budget approvals, setting up your Google accounts if you haven't done that, all of those Google entities, getting them connected, and then getting your financial stuff put into Google actually. You also have to collect all your assets to put into the ads. So our startup time took about 2+ months. It was more towards the longer term there. Once your ads are up and running, you want to give them a couple months to do their thing so you can get some meaningful data out of them. More time if you can, because that just lets you see a longer trend. And then budget-wise, at bare minimum, $500 a month per ad type. We recommend you start with more just so you can make a larger impact and see some impact from that budget and actually make some better decisions later on. The more you can spend, the better you're going to get, more data you're going to get back to review. You're going to bring some people from your team into this project. First and foremost, you're going to designate a campaign manager. This is the person who's going to run point on your ads. They're going to gather all the assets, they're going to set up these ads, and then they're going to monitor them regularly. You want to bring in a copywriter if you can. That copywriter is going to align all of your campaign messages across the board. Make sure you're using the right keywords, everything's sounding nice. Then you want to also bring in a creative advisor. This is, a designer or maybe an art director who's going to help you line up those visuals. You need really high quality visuals for your Google ads, especially display ads and video ads. You want to make sure that they're at the right specs, and then also that you have a great number of them to pick from so that you can have different combinations of ads. And then if you are fortunate enough to have a data analyst like we have Leslie, bringing them in to help bring all your monthly reports together. This is sometimes if you don't have data analysts, your campaign manager may have to wear that hat. They're just going to be distilling all the top level data points for leadership and making sure that that feedback is happening with the rest of the team. So once you have involved all of these people, you have to get up and running. And this process for setting up your accounts is pretty intuitive. Google literally walks you through the whole thing. But once you get your ad manager account set up and your payment profile set up, just plugging in all of your data can take a little bit of time, but then you'll just jump right into making your ads. So when you're putting your ads together, the first thing Google's going to ask you is what kind of ad you want to run and what is your objective. And so that's where, as Michele mentioned, we've already designated that in our strategy, and we just input those into Google. So we're going to be running a display ad, and our objective is impressions, or maybe our objective is clicks. If we're running a video ad, we're going to look for views or maybe click through to a form. then you're going to tell Google who you want to see that ad or who you don't want to see that ad. And defined target audiences, their demographics, locations, so forth. All of that comes from Michelle's spreadsheet or plan that she gave us. As she noted, sometimes we have state audiences, sometimes it's a national audience. The better that is defined, the easier it is to set up in Google. Then it's pretty easy to set up your budget and your timeline. That also comes from our plan. And then we need to configure our conversion triggers. This one's a little bit different. This is how you tell Google what you consider a successful conversion. That is letting Google know if not only if somebody's clicked through to your website, but they've also stayed on the page for 15 seconds, and that is considered a successful conversion. Or perhaps they click through and filled out a form, and that's a successful conversion. So depending on what type of campaign you're doing, you need to set that up on the back end with your Google Analytics. All of that great creative copy and photos and videos that you collected, you're going to put all of those assets into your ad. That's the fun part. And then you go live. So once you go live, you will monitor your campaigns. I like to keep a close eye on them for at least a couple weeks to make sure that there's no glitches, that the budget hasn't gone crazy, that maybe it's not performing the way that we thought it would. And then if there's nothing that really needs to be tweaked and I'm comfortable with the ad and how it's running, I'll, maybe then just check in on it once a month, or not once a month, once a week. Please don't let it go for over a month. But do report monthly back to leadership and to your group. We like to report back to the entire group that was involved in setting up the ads. So we report back to our copywriters and our creative advisors, and then we also report up to leadership as well. So on this next slide, I'm going to show you an example of how I take Michelle's very nice laid out PDF plan and I put it into a working Excel spreadsheet. And then this is where I also plug in all of the budget information and our click-through URL and so forth, some of the additional details that we're going to need to input into Google. And then this spreadsheet is a shared document with the rest of our team so that, first of all, they know what I'm putting into Google. And secondly, at any time, we can log into our Google Ads and quickly cross-reference this spreadsheet and make sure that things are running smoothly and nothing's going AWOL. Everybody knows what our daily max spend is and that Google's not going off the wall with that. Sometimes we also have to tweak our budgets if certain campaigns are not performing, or maybe, we're just pivoting mid-semester. And so that's where we'll make changes in this spreadsheet and then also align them with Google. And that's that bottom example there is how all of this information translates into Google. On the next slide here, we have what is an example of our responsive ads. We used to do display ads where we'd have our designers create every single combination or ad placement. What's the word I'm looking for, Michelle? Like every single piece of art.
All the sizes.
All the
sizes.
possible. There are like a million sizes because Google can put ads literally anywhere and in any shape and form. Well, the advent of their responsive ads have really, really helped us to just plug in what photos and key headlines that we want, and then Google comes up with its own combinations. What's great is Google uses machine learning to determine all of these inputs that we've given it, which combination of them is going to perform best with our target audiences. And then as you can see on this example, it also gives us feedback as to what's not performing and what we might want to retool or take back to the team and say, hey, we know we thought this was a keyword, but it's not performing the way we thought it did, or it will. So this is a really great type of ad that we like to lean on, especially for our brand awareness campaigns. And we typically run these for most of the year. And the next
And you
example,
said it was photo, words, and then logos are kind of the three things you need for that, right? For the responsive.
yes, sorry, I omitted that part.
No, that's okay.
Yes, photos in two sizes, horizontal or square photos, horizontal and square logos, and then you, as an option, photo or video, short video.
Right.
And then you have 5 headlines, 5 descriptions, longer descriptions, a call to action, which Michele just said, maybe we don't need to put click here. Google will do that for you. But now you have a lot of options of different calls to action. And then your click through URL. And then Google will just mix and match those. And here's an example of how it's done that with, you see the same headline, same description, but these are just different ad placement options on different Google properties. It can, and that photo could be different on any website.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we've learned. That's one of the things that we've learned over the years. Like Kalena said, we totally used to make the designers build out all these different, and that was just the way you did it, you know, previously. And so Google has even come a long way on that. So that's been helpful. All right. So let's see. Speaking of what have we learned? That is one of the things here. Number 2 listed, the responsive ad options are best. Like just take advantage of that easy, like Kalena said, photo, you know, a couple sizes, a handful of descriptions. And Google really does kind of help you sort of optimize. So I'm skipping around on our few key takeaways here, but that take advantage of Google optimization tips was really kind of one that we really all were like, okay, yeah, let's talk through this. That's the thing though, you still want to talk through them. So even if it says, hey, like I think on the last couple slides ago, it said to optimize at this headline or change this headline based on what they were saying, or maybe the image isn't working as well as a different image. It's still worth taking a look at though. Go back to your goals and say, okay, what do we really want to have happen? What are we really trying to do? Because they will always assume that you want whatever your conversion is. Like Kalena, you can said earlier, you can set that conversion up to be different things, but they're assuming that that's always what you want, and it might not always be. So just kind of making sure you're checking in on that. So to go back to number 1, I think that on these key takeaways, really taking the time to identify those targets and the goals is worth it. We kind of started this process back whenever we kicked off our pilot and didn't have all of that really mapped out. And so it was nice to kind of, you know, it cost us a little bit of time and money to figure out. But now that we kind of have a cadence to it, it's nice to be able to just have that sort of set and we know what we're doing. So definitely taking the time to do that was good. And then skipping down to the 4th one. So reviewing the high level results with leadership. Like Kalena said, you're monitoring on a regular basis with your working team, but I think continuing to take it to leadership to get buy-in. I've found that a lot of times higher ed is less excited about digital than like a tech company obviously would be where I came from, but also just there's not a whole lot of people in certain pockets that are doing it as much. And so we're kind of trying to like train people up as we go as well. Just here's the benefit and here's what you can learn. And we are able to actually take learnings and then apply it to print, because we absolutely still do print and there is still a place for it. But it's nice to be able to learn something and then be able to say, okay, well, that image didn't work as well, so let's go ahead and pivot when we do a print ad next time or something like that. So I think that's been also helpful to see. So to give you an example of, this is a little blurry, but you can kind of get the idea of it here, is that this is sort of some performance that we've seen. This is actually in Data Studio. Like Kalena said earlier, we are lucky enough to have Leslie on our team who presented yesterday, if any of you had heard her presentation, but she'd mentioned that you can connect the Google Ads and Google Analytics through Data Studio, so that kind of just all comes together into sort of this dashboard view, so you can take a look at what's working. So you sort of see your campaigns, the different ads which equal your messages, what impressions, what clicks you're getting, what kind of site traffic you're driving. So you can see in this specific time frame, we had we're tracking along, and then we paused everything and kind of rethought our strategy, changed some things up, and then there were a lot more dips and things throughout the next piece, but it allowed that time frame to overall have a higher impact. So it's really nice to be able to kind of do that. So the last piece that we had was just our pros and cons for you before we jump into questions. So Kalena, did you want to talk through some of these?
Sure. First and foremost, I think we all know the biggest pro to bringing your ads in-house is the cost savings. You're going to be putting 20-25% of your budget back towards your ads when you're not having to pay those setup fees and those reporting fees that agencies charge you. And as Michele mentioned, another pro is being able to act quickly, to kind of cut out that lag time that we have with agencies. And if something comes up, that we can quickly put a campaign behind it for our major university news or breakthroughs that happen sometimes in the middle of larger campaigns. Then with that comes the flexibility to optimize our ads. Like Michele said, when we're seeing some tips that Google gives us, we want to tweak that on the fly. And then maybe realign our messaging a little bit if we're seeing something change or we need to pivot in the middle of the semester. Being able to do all of these things quickly without having to go through an agency has definitely been a perk. And then I find that even being able to tweak the creative is a stronger, more efficient use of all of the amazing assets that we have. We have some really strong video that sometimes comes up last minute, maybe some great drone footage that came in yesterday, and we want to pop that into a display ad. That's great to be able to do on the fly. And then, of course, it's always a benefit to add a skill set to our team. Some of the cons is that it takes a lot of time to stay up on what Google's doing and all the new tricks and trends and what they're allowing or disallowing, and how it's affecting your campaigns. As for some of us, it's not your full-time job to run ads, it's just a part of what you do. And so taking the time to stay educated on it can be challenging. And as Michele said, when you don't have that much time to stay up on things, you're not going to take as many risks with your ads. You're not going to be running retargeting campaigns necessarily, or maybe not, trying geofencing. You're going to stick to really safe campaigns and goals. And so I think agencies take, they try more complex campaigns, and that's really not what you're going to have the time to do if you bring your ads in-house, likely. And then for us, at least, or anyone who isn't centrally aligned, billing can be a headache because we all have separate budgets on campus, but then Google wants us all to pay as one. And so I have to manage a lot of the invoicing and the internal invoicing and making sure that everybody's paid up so that everybody's ads don't get shut down. If one person misses paying their invoice, then everybody pays the repercussions for it. So it can be a challenge to keep finances straight with Google as well. And I think that's a wrap on what we wanted to share with you today. And we're happy to answer any more questions.
So yeah, questions in the chat. How many employees on your team are dedicated to creating and managing digital campaigns? So it's what, like Kalena said, no one person's job. It's a portion of, I would say, mine, Kalena's, of course. We have a web developer who helps with some of it as well. And then our analytics person as well. We also will sometimes tap a couple of our project managers who just have done digital marketing in their careers. So it's kind of a combination of people, but I would say probably 4 or 5, but only a portion of their jobs. So it's definitely no one person's only job by any means. Do you have any resources to help stay as up to date as you can with Google updates and ads? So Kalena, do you have, I don't have anything specific, but is there anything specific you or Derek look at?
Nothing specific. I feel like it takes a village and we just stay up on tech news and
Yeah.
it finds its way to us, or Google itself will release some updates when we've logged in
True.
and we go through that way.
Yeah, that's true. We do get updates from them directly sometimes as well. So, let's see. Do you help individual schools or colleges with marketing campaigns, or just focus on university level? The way just that we're structured, we focus on our university level primarily, but we just as a team with everything that we do are kind of advisors to campus. And so this is certainly something we have. A group called the Digital Marketing Group that is cross UGA. Anyone and everyone is welcome to participate in those conversations. And we talk about everything from email to web to digital to paid search to new on the horizon kind of digital things. So we definitely act as advisors to campus, but we aren't actually hand holding it all. I think, Kalena, you probably do more of that than I do, but generally speaking, it's just lots of conversations. So,
Yep.
And with social as well. She does that with social too. So, any advice on convincing campus partners to invest more in digital and perhaps shifting print funds to digital? We have seen this over even just the last couple of years. I think part of it is just the data to be able to say, we did this, this was our strategy, this is what we executed, and this is what we learned directly from it. Has definitely been, seeing that data actually presented has been something that people have really liked and have been able to kind of get on the side of digital. And I think they know that that's how a lot of times they digest information. It does go back to your strategy. It goes back to the audience. Who are you actually talking to as to whether this makes sense? But generally speaking, most of our audiences, even as we think about ourselves, are digesting digital content and ads more than anything else these days. So it's been a shift. It's been a slow shift, but yeah, there's pretty easy. So yeah, definitely happy to share the templates. I don't know, Brandy, if there's a good way to do that or if presentations and other things will be available. But I could also put just like that PowerPoint slide or the spreadsheet I know that Kalena has. We could even deliver that over with the presentation. So happy to do that for sure. Anything else? Yay. Well, thanks for the time today, guys. I appreciate it. I know you had other options and we appreciate you coming to us. So Brandy, anything else for the group?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Michelle and Kalena, for that presentation. We too, I've done a lot of the digital advertising work here in our department, and I was elated when Google started providing that responsive option that just kind of really, walks you through. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And we actually did a little A/B testing of, some of the using some of the digital display where the ads were, created. There's an opportunity cost there, the amount of time that it takes to create those, and then
Right.
those alongside at the same time as ads that were done using the responsive tool. And the ones using the responsive tool actually performed a lot better. So
Yep.
that we can definitely, the University of Alabama can testify.
That's good. That's good.
Success
Reiterating.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like it.
As a reminder, all conference content will be available in the on-demand library, and you can get to that using the link from the SECCA homepage. We encourage you to take advantage of that content. Not only is it available now, but it will be available after the conference. In addition to the conference sessions being there, there's there are quite a few pre-recorded content sessions that are there already. We encourage you to return to the SECCA website at secca.ua.edu to rejoin the general session live stream for closing remarks by Ryan Bradley. Those are set to begin, I believe, scheduled at 1:45. So if you guys will grab a coffee, a little extra caffeine to get you through the rest of the day, and then join us back there on that live stream. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the conference as much as I have. The content, I feel like, has been phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Brandy.